I want to thank everybody for being a part of this class. If you've been at some of our others, hopefully you've met me before. If this is your first time, we're so glad to have you with us. Today, we're going to be doing a class called the 5 Mistakes Federal Employees Make in Retirement. But before we begin into that, I do want to just real quick, just introduce myself, who we are, Livingston Financial Group. We are out of the DC, Baltimore area, but we have advisors across the country. Our goal is to work with federal employees to help them explain, analyze, and coordinate their pensions, their survivor benefits, thrift savings plan, group life insurance, your health benefits, along with any personal savings you might have, investments, life insurance, things that we can look at the whole picture. And we tell people our goal is we're trying to be in a position where we can help you not only know when you're eligible to retire, but knowing when you're able to retire. And I tell people that's a huge difference in one word, eligible and able, is it really comes down to what does your financial picture look like can determine a lot of times of when you're going to walk away from the federal government. So as we get into this day, like I said, I want us to be able to go over this, help you with any questions you might have as we go through. And we'll kind of go through together here. So kind of the way I like to do this, give you a quick client sample. So this is going to be John Doe. He's a federal employee. He's from Anytown, USA. Beautiful town if you've never been there. He was born in 1965. He has an annual salary of $95,000. He's been working for the federal government since September 21st, 1995, with no breaks in service, and he's under the FERS retirement system. Now, giving this to you, I'm not telling you this because this is everybody's got to have these same numbers and same information. I'm using it just as a point of reference as we do pull up some numbers today and give you some examples with some calculations and those kind of things. I want to make sure that you understand where those numbers are coming from. So that's why we give you John's information here on what we have here and going forward. All right. So let's start with the first mistake. Actually, even before that, I want to, well, I'll tie it into this, not knowing your retirement eligibility. This is one of those things that a lot of people say, well, Michael, of course I know my eligibility. I'm eligible to retire on this date. And they have a countdown clock on their computer and those kind of things. And I said, that's all well and good. But I tell people there's a couple of things to make sure of. And when you go through these calculations, you want to make sure that when you talk to your HR department or anybody that you're looking at the right information. So for instance, John Doe, some of these pictures I'm going to show you, by the way, and I should have said this at the beginning, we are financial advisors that, like I said, help with federal employees. We offer anybody who comes to this class an opportunity to have a benefit analysis done. You can reach out to us by email or go to our website, livingstonfinancialgroup.com. I had it on the first slide. I'll have it up again at the end here so you can know how to get a hold of me. But we're offering you a free benefit analysis that you can have completed that will calculate all these things. So some of the pictures you're going to see today, some of the calculations are actually snapshots from a benefit analysis that we did here for John Doe. So in this situation, again, he's a regular FERS employee. He's planning to retire at the end of 2025. So he'll have 30 years and 3 months. He'll be 60 years old. He'll have met all the requirements. He'll be ready to retire. At that time, his annual salary will be 103,900, and his high three average is going to be 102,874. And we gave him a cost of living adjustment of 1.83% in retirement. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we look at some of the others. So I bring this up because when we talk about this then, and you talk about, not knowing your retirement eligibility, we tell people, make sure you contact to see your HR for a confirmation of your retirement service computation date. Now, the reason we have retirement underlined there, and if you've been in some of our other classes already, we talked about this one week, is understanding your service computation date that you see on your leave and earnings statement is not necessarily the same as your retirement service computation date. You actually have 4 separate service computation dates through the government. There's a retirement one, there's TSP, there's your leave and earnings one, and then there's another one, and I apologize, I can never remember because it doesn't deal with your retirement benefits. So I say that looking at this is your service computation date might be one date on your leave and earnings statement, and your retirement one could be different. Now, before everybody gets upset and gets nervous, I will say 95% of us, they're going to be the exact same date. But I say it's so important to make sure you check that before you go to retire. If you find some kind of discrepancy, so you contact your HR department, say, hey, I'd like to just confirm my retirement service computation date. They should get back in touch with you with the date. And if you see that there's a problem, you have to show them where the problem is. You have to give them, proof that there's a mistake. SF50s are the first place to go to get those and be able to share the discrepancy. Those are the forms you get anytime you change jobs, you get a new position, step up, those kind of things. You're always going to get a new SF50. Used to be they were all physical files. Now everything is digital that you can get online, and you should be able to get a hold of those. One of the things on that, and I'll tell people, is on that is being ready for it, is beware of the intern pay there. And part of this is going to be part of what I'm talking about here is don't wait until you're like a week before retirement to check your retirement service computation date. Make sure you're checking that earlier than just a couple months. Reason is they say retirement is more stressful than getting married. I don't know. I haven't retired yet. I remember how stressful it was when I got married. And I'm saying that with my wife here in the building with me. She's helping to pack up also. And I don't mean that because I don't love my wife, but it's because, you know, it was a big change in life. There's a lot of things that had to be done for the wedding, but also for what was going to happen afterwards with change of addresses and joining our bank accounts together, those kind of things. So there's a lot of stress there. When you go to retire, there's going to be a lot of stress. And if you find out that your retirement service computation date is different than what you were planning for, it is going to send your stress level through the roof. So you want to get that ahead of time. Make sure you're checking that. The reason I say the SF50s too is because I've seen this happen twice where somebody retired, put in their paperwork. When they got something back from OPM, they said, we regret to inform you that you are not eligible for retirement. It's actually you retired too early. You need to come back to work. And where you're going to want to, you know, shout and yell and be mad at everybody, they're going to say you have to prove it to us, and they're going to want the SF50s. I bring that up because once you retire electronically, you're not able to get into any of your accounts to get your SF50s. You'd have to request them from OPM, and they have to get them to you. So I highly encourage everybody, download your SF50s ahead of time. Try to get things ready so that you have them just in case there's an issue after you retire. Okay. When I say about the intern pay there at the bottom of this one is when you go to retire, they calculate what your pension is going to be. When you go to retire, that stuff all goes to OPM and they have to recalculate it. While they're recalculating it, they're going to give you an intern pay that's going to be roughly 60% of what your full pension is going to be. And during that time, they're calculating your information. Now, you still have all your benefits, your health benefits, you still have your life insurance. All those things are still there. They might not be coming out of your intern check, but I promise you the government is running a tab for you. And when you get your full pension, they're going to give you the lump sum they didn't pay you during that intern. But out of that, they're going to take out the life insurance cost, the health insurance cost, and those kind of things. All right. So that's the first one. We need to get that right away to know where we're going, how we're doing things, is making sure you know that. The second one is no knowledge of the expected retirement income. And when I say this is too many times we look at people and the first question we always ask when we tell people like, what do you want to do in retirement? What do you see yourself doing? Or how much income do you need based on what your goals? And most people say, well, I think this, I think that, and they don't really have a solid number of what they really want to have in retirement for income. So we tell people it's very important you sit down and look at your solutions. You got to understand your needs first. So we say you got to work backwards. Now, what we put up here at the top, again, this is just a snapshot out of one of our benefit analysis that shows, if you see the first column at age 60 is showing John retiring, just as we said, the end of 2025. He's looking at an annuity before penalties of 31,548. Then what we do is we're showing that well, what if you waited till 61, 62, 63, 64? And trying to show the differences of if you went at 60 or you decided to wait. So first of all, you want to understand those needs. Figure out, I can say I want to retire all day long at 60, but if my needs are greater than what my income is going to be, then I have a problem. So you might want to look at that. So calculate your government annuity as we're showing you here, your pension. One of the things to remember, and we'll see it here, is for regular FERS employees, which I'm assuming most of us on here are. If you're a special provision, maybe we could talk later about the differences on yours. There'll be a few, and we might hit a few of them here. But for most of us being regular FERS employees, if you decided to work to age 62 and you have at least 20 years of service, they're going to give you a 10% increase in your pension calculation. So if you look at the picture at the top, you notice at age 60 here for John, his pension is coming out at 31,548. Notice at age 61, it goes up to 32,989. So you're looking at what, a difference of about $400. $1,400 annually difference. So about a little over $100 a month is the only difference there that you're looking at. But notice all of a sudden it's 62, it went from 30, almost 33,000 to almost 38,000. That's a $5,000 increase per year, annually, and including cost of living adjustments. So that's a huge difference. So this might be the kind of thing that, again, looking at these kind of things, knowing your needs, you might say, you know what, maybe I don't want to go at 60. Maybe I want to wait till 62 to get the higher amount. Now, notice at 63, that difference goes back to just being, about $1,500. It's that one jump because of the 20 years that he would have. So just something to remember there as we're moving forward. Another thought on that is once you know your pension needs, then next look at what you can expect from withdrawal income from your investments, whether that's your TSP, whether that's a private investment account you have, maybe it's a spouse's 401k, maybe it's an old 401k you have. Look at all those things and determine what's right for you that you want to use on those things. The other thing is, as a FERS employee, you're going to have what they call the FERS supplement and Social or Social Security, I'll say, because I'm sorry, excuse me. If you retire before age 62, like we're talking John here, John would retire before age 62. He's not eligible for Social Security yet, but he would be eligible because he's retiring at full eligibility at age 60 with 30 years. He could get the FERS supplement. FERS supplement just gets added on. It's something there to kind of help get you to age 62. We're not going to go through that today. That's going to be another class later this year that we're going to talk a little bit more about that in detail. But I do want to point out that you're going to get something, but it will stop at age 62 when you're eligible for Social Security. Does not mean that you have to start taking Social Security then, but, and again, we'll get into more details about that later this year, but you will stop your FERS supplement at that point. Okay. If you're a CSRS employee, which again, I don't think there's any of us probably that are. If you are, there's a windfall elimination, which means if you are eligible to get Social Security, you're probably going to lose a good bit of it because you're supposed to not have it, even if you're eligible for it. It's the craziest thing. And I know there's a lot of people trying to change that now. Again, even if you have 20 years of substantial earnings, of paying into Social Security as a CSRS employee, you'd probably only get 40%. Now, if you're not CSRS, ignore that. You don't have to worry about that. And I want to bring up here, this is, I know I'm going to hit a little bit more of this here as we get into TSP and the healthcare and those kind of things, or I mean, the life insurance. Many years ago, I got to do a seminar similar to this one out in Utah for a group of FAA employees, air traffic controllers. And I remember somebody asked me, he said, Michael, what's the biggest mistake you see federal employees make in retirement? And as you can see, we're doing a 5-mistake class here. And I had to tell him, I said, well, you kind of caught me off guard because I have one that's the 5 mistakes. And so I thought about it, and there were 2 things that came to mind. So I kind of fudged. I gave him the top 2, and it's going to tie in right here. The first one, I'm going to make my funny one because it ties into this comment that we just put on the page here. The biggest mistake I see federal employees make is they listen to the retirement expert that works in the cubicle next to them. Now, hopefully, some of you got a good chuckle out of that and the fact that you know that person, and hopefully you're not that person, but that person that can tell you everything you need to know about your retirement or about finances, about investing, those kind of things. Be very careful, especially in a situation where you might be in a building where you have some FERS employees. You might have some special provisions, whether it's law enforcement, air traffic controllers, firefighters. You might have some people that are still CSRS. There's actually a new one now called FERS Ray, revised annuity employees. That is anybody that was hired after 2014. So you have all these different people that have different benefits based on when they were hired. Be very careful. Somebody talking to you about your retirement or about your income and your investments, take it with a grain of salt, because again, in your situation, it might be completely different. So you need to make sure you're talking to somebody who understands the differences and is talking to you specifically about your situation. We encourage everybody, sit down and talk to a financial advisor that understands your benefits. That doesn't have to be us. It can be anybody, but make sure they understand the federal benefits and they can talk to you specifically, I'll get the word out, about your situation. The second one, and this is going to tie in more as we look more into the life insurance and thrift savings, is too many federal employees only look at the day they retire when they make their decision to walk away. So for instance, if I'm sitting here saying, okay, I'm eligible today, I'm making this amount of money. When I go to retire, I'm going to make this amount, and they're pretty equal. I might say, okay, I'm walking away. And I'm not looking at the ramifications of some choices I make of what could be coming down the road. I'll give you an example right here on this page. You look at the top. I'm going to walk away at 60 because I'm eligible. Well, that's great. You're making $31,548 a year. You get no cost of living adjustments until 62, and you're retiring now. That's fine. You're going to get the supplement. Whereas if I wait till 62 to retire, now my supplement's going to be roughly about $7,000, a little over $7,000 more a year, and I'm going to start getting cost of living adjustments on that amount right away is what's going to happen. So again, these are the things that I say it's very important that you look at all the scenarios in your situation and talk to somebody to make sure that you're choosing what's right for you and your family. All right. So in the calculation of your pension, just to put this in there with that, normally for a regular FERS employee, it's going to be 1% times your high three times your years of service, and that's going to give you your FERS pension. Again, 1%, notice the decimal place 0.01 when you go to do that. And Joe's sample here, where you see the number we came up with, retired at age 57, high three average of 108,253. He's got 34 years and 1 month at the time because we added in some sick leave at that time. And that's something, again, is another class that we could take. But the sick leave gets added into that. And in this case, he had 34 years. He'd have a pension of 36,980. If you calculate that with the decimal point in the wrong spot and you come out with a pension higher than what you're making now, before you tell your supervisor off and before you walk out the door, make sure that you calculated that correctly. All right. I'm going to skip past that, the law enforcement right now. If somebody's special needs, let me know. We'll get to that. So number 3, planning for retirement. Biggest mistake is the improper planning for the survivor annuity, survivor benefit that you're going to have for somebody. So what is a survivor? Survivor, it could be a spouse, an ex-spouse, a minor child, disabled child, or an insurable interest. That is the 5 options that you have there. To be able to even talk about a survivor benefit, you have to have at least 10 years of service in the federal government. 5 of that has to be civilian. The other 5 could be military buyback, and that's fine to qualify. But just looking at those 5, the spouse, ex-spouse, minor child, disabled child, and insurable interest, something to notice there with the 3 asterisks that we have. It's by the spouse, ex-spouse, and insurable interest. If you want to have them on your health benefits, and the most common one we see here is, again, a spouse. You have your spouse on your health benefits. If I do not choose a survivor benefit, when I go into retirement, yes, they can be on my health benefits, but the day I die, they would not be eligible to continue the health benefits as a survivor. So it's very, very important that if you're a FERS employee and you have a spouse, ex-spouse, or insurable interest on your health benefits, that you're going to want to choose some kind of survivor benefit. That is the first thing I'll say there, that we got to make sure that we have, and you have it there. We have to be in it for 5 years in this. I'm sorry, that's the health benefits. Sorry. For the health benefits, though, you have to be in it for 5 years if you're going to carry them into retirement. That is definitely there. A spouse that's not a federal employee, they are not required to be in there for 5 consecutive years prior to separation. You can add them on any time during an open season. So just a little thing there. Insurable interest, some people ask what that is. The joke we always make is it's not a bookie. It's not somebody you owe money to. It's usually somebody who's in a physical / mental situation that they are completely dependent on you. A couple years ago, had a federal employee we were working with that had a brother that was mentally handicapped, physically handicapped, and his parents were the guardians. They passed away. She became his guardian and caretaker. And so that would be considered an insurable interest. They cannot survive without you. That's an insurable interest. As a FERS employee, you have the 3 options. I mentioned the one already, no survivor benefit. If you do that one, again, I don't recommend that if you have somebody on your health insurance. But the other 2 are 25 and 50. Now, you do not even choose this until you retire. So it's not something you have to go today and choose what you're doing now. But when you do your retirement paperwork on there, you have to choose what kind of survivor benefit you want to leave. I say that because in retirement, this is one of those I said about they only look at the short term, not the long term of retirement. This is a decision that once you make it, you cannot change it unless there's a life-changing event. So if me and my spouse decide, hey, we don't want the survivor benefit, we want more money now, we'll be fine. And you sign up for 0 survivor benefit, and 5 years from now, 10 years from now, you and your spouse go, you know what, maybe we need to add that survivor benefit back in. Not going to happen. Cannot do it. So it is set in stone at that point. So just letting you know that again, if something you need to plan for, but you do not have to make that decision today. That's going to be in the future. So what we did here is we just took a quick little snapshot here, showing again from one of our things, showing the cost of everything. And if you look at this, we're showing again in his case, we're looking at a $2,600 monthly benefit. If he does the full survivor benefit for his spouse, you're looking at 2366. And if he passes away, his spouse is going to get 1315, which is 50% of the full amount, that 2629. But he's going to pay for it. And in retirement, the cost is as a FERS employee. Oh, let me get it. It didn't move on me. For a FERS employee, for FERS, 50% is the most you can do. CSRs can go up as high as 55. I told you you can do the 2550. I want to get real. No, that's not it. Why did that not come up? I apologize. What you're looking at is a cost of 10% to do the full survivor benefit of 50%. So the 263, you notice that's 10% of the 262.9. They rounded up there, 263. If you want to do the partial survivor benefit, it's going to be 5%. And again, you do not start paying that until you're in retirement. You choose it on your retirement paperwork. Again, for FERS, you only have three options: 0, 25, or 50. Again, if you're a CSRS employee, which again, if you are, good on you, you got anywhere between 0 and 55% that you can go. So you could choose actually 1% to make that happen. So we tell people then you might want to look at some options and maybe look at supplementing your pension with some life insurance, or if you've done a great job saving on your TSP or other investments, it might be a way that you can say, well, instead of us paying that whole 263 to the government, maybe I only want to pay half of that, the 5%, because I still want the health benefits. So maybe I only want to pay the 132, and then take that other $130 and invest it or buy into life insurance, those kind of things. I do want to look at one other thing on this, though, just to kind of talk how that works. If I choose the survivor benefit, understand, and this is again, if your spouse is not a federal employee. If your spouse is a federal employee, then maybe we can talk later. There might be some other options for you. But with you, if you take the survivor benefit, notice that it says in this case, by age 70, you spent 37,000 for it. By age 80, spent 78,000. If me and my wife say this is us and we're in retirement, and she passes away first, I do not get back any of that money I paid into the survivor benefit. That's gone. Now, they will stop charging me for it as soon as I turn in a death certificate and fill out a form. And to be honest, that's one of those things that, thanks, I appreciate it, government. But again, I have to prove it. But they'll stop charging me for it at that point. So when I do the survivor benefit here, I'm expecting my spouse to outlive me. Second of all, think about it. The farther I get in retirement, look at age 80, I spent 78,000. Well, if me and my spouse are close in age, and I say close, within 3 or 4 years, if I'm at 80 and they're at 75 to 80 years old, or 80 to 85, then their life expectancy has gone down. So in their case, it might be, yeah, I might pass away first, but are they going to live long enough to make up that $78,000 difference? So this is why a lot of times we say you might want to look at the partial and maybe look at some life insurance options, because on the life insurance, if you pass away, well, now that you can pass that to your kids, pass it to your church or hospital. There's a lot of options you can do there, or just cancel it completely if your spouse passes away, but you're in control. That's one of the biggest things there. So just saying that to you, that's something I think is definitely something you need to talk about and look at. But again, that's not the full class today. I just want to give that as a thought here when we talk about planning for the survivor benefit. Again, it's improper planning is one of the biggest mistakes we see. And most of the time, I will say, when we hear it from people, it's people that are already retired saying, I didn't know I had an option. I didn't know I could do that. Nobody ever told me that before. So hopefully you're in a position now that you're hearing this and seeing it, so you know that this is happening and that is a possibility. All right. So let's talk about the TSP and talk about what we see here now. And it's number 4 is improper funding and allocation of your thrift savings plan. So in this, what you're seeing at the top is this is just, again, from the John Doe we've done before. We actually started that one in 2016 with him. But what we did is just took a snapshot of showing, hey, with the way he's invested, the way he's putting money into it each pay period, we're showing what the account should be each year. That's a nice way of planning. It's also a nice way of, as a, let's see, not a thermometer, but a barometer, I guess, where you can measure where you're at. So if we're showing on this report that come the end of 2023, that John should have $779,195 in his TSP. Well, when he gets to the end of 2023, he can look at it and say, am I there? Is he there? He might be above it, might be below it, and kind of helps him plan, what do I need to do this next year or the next 2 years before I retire, to try to either reach my goal or maybe make myself more conservative so I don't lose out on the money I've already reached. So when we look at the solution, 3 keys to a successful TSP. One is time. Oh, sorry about that. I hit it too fast. The second is consistent contributions. And finally, diversification. Time, I will say that is something we can never get back, but we're going to talk about how time can affect you here in a little bit. Consistent contributions. Don't wait till once I get my house paid off. Now I'm going to start contributing. You need to start right away. Start right away. Be consistent with it. Consistent. And finally, be diversified. Trying to say which fund is the one I should be in right now and trying to jump one to another. You're going to hit it right every once in a while, but you're probably going to be wrong at other times. And you're either going to stay too conservative or you're going to get too aggressive at times. So be diversified. Again, if you know what you're doing, great, wonderful. If you need to talk to somebody, very important that you talk to somebody. As a FERS employee, you are going to get a 5% match on your contributions each year. That has not changed. So I tell people, if you're not at least doing 5%, you need to start doing 5% just to get that match. That's free money. I tell people that first 5%, you're guaranteed a 100% return on. Even Bernie Madoff can't do that well, or couldn't do that well. Sorry, what I say. So again, that's one of those things I say it's very important to at least get the 5% match. You have 2 options of investing inside of your TSP. It's pre-tax or the traditional, or an after-tax Roth. And I'll show you the breakdown of those in a moment. Some of our other slides coming up here. But just understand there is 2 different types you can invest in now, and it doesn't matter what you make as income. For many years, if you're, and still is, if you're trying to do a Roth IRA on your own, an individual retirement account, there are earning limits. Inside your TSP, there are not. You can do the Roth TSP anytime you want to, no matter how much you make. All right. In 2023 now, the limits are 22,500. If you are turning 50 this year or you're already over 50, you can do an additional 7,500, which brings you up to $30,000. That's a huge chunk. It took a big jump this year. So I encourage everybody, you know, if you've been doing percentages in the past and you're not sure what the dollar amount is, look at it, because it's not based on percentages anymore. You can actually do up to a dollar amount of $30,000 if you're turning 50 this year. If you're not turning 50, then it's still the 22.5, but that usually goes up every year. So it's really nice to know that you have some room there to put more money in if you're not already maxing it out. Inside of your TSP, I'm going to go over the original ones first here, and then we'll talk about the new investments they came out with last year. But there are 5 major funds, main funds that you have available inside your TSP, the GFCINS. Your G fund is government bonds. It's the fixed account. That's the one that's a made up number just for you guys inside of there. It's the account that cannot lose money. So you can put your money there and not have to worry about it losing money. I tell people, when we have volatile times, yes, there was a big down day in the markets. That G fund could be your best investment out there. It could be a nice thing to have that you can have available to you in tumultuous times. So I tell people that G fund could be one of the best things you have available to you inside the TSP. But at the same time, that G fund can be one of the worst things you have available to you inside the TSP. And I say that for the reason of too many times we put our money there and forget about it. And yes, that's great in down times, but when the markets bounce back, which they do, and they've done every time that they've had a downturn, if you're still sitting in the G fund, you're missing out on a lot of the gains that can be there to help for the long-term investing. And we'll talk about that again with time in just a moment here. So be careful on that. It's also the only fund that can be borrowed against by government to pay their debts. They've done it a few times. Now, they always pay it back, but they can borrow against it. So just be careful on that. F fund is the aggregate bond index. This is, again, investing in corporate bonds. You've probably seen that one pretty volatile over the last year as interest rates have been rising. Once interest rates kind of flatten for a while, that'd probably be a nice investment for you. But if you already have F fund, you've probably taken a good hit with some of the growth that's been there, some of the rising interest rates that they've put in there. The G and the F fund together kind of make up your bond portfolio of your investment inside your TSP. This is what it does. The CINS now is going to be more of your equity or stock portfolio. C fund is going to be your S&P 500, the largest 500 companies in the U.S. is what they monitor. I fund is the EAFE index, International Stock Fund, that you watch. You can look that up. Also, the EAFE index. It's Europe, Australia, Far East. And then the S fund is the Wilshire 4500 index. It's the next largest 4,500 companies after the top 500. And it's more small, mid caps is what you're looking at there, funds. And those are going to be your equity portfolios. I will say it used to be if you were in all three, you were kind of diversified. Nowadays, they kind of, us being a global economy, they're going to kind of move together a lot, maybe at different levels, but they're going to move together, especially the C and the S move a lot alike. The L funds are something that came up with a number of years ago. Again, if you have not invested in the L funds before or don't know what they are, they're a target date portfolio, which means you're going to choose L 2030, L 2040, L 2050, which are whatever target date you want. And what they're going to do is they're going to invest your money among the 5 funds that we just talked about here, based on you taking the money out at that target date. Now, as you get closer to that date, they're going to make your investments more conservative. So you're going to have more of your money being transferred over to the G and the F as you get closer to that target date. Notice I keep saying target date, not retirement date. And here's why. That date you can pick does not have to be your retirement date. And in fact, I will tell you most of the time, I encourage people, do not make it your retirement date. And here's why. So I mentioned first thing, one of the biggest things that can help your TSP is time. When we usually look at our TSP, almost everybody does this. They look at their TSP and they think about timing based on the day they're going to retire. And I tell people that's not always the best thing to do, because of the fact you could be in a situation now where you could now be in a situation where, yeah, I'm retiring at 60, but I'm going to live another 20 to 30 years. And I need some of my TSP funds or investment funds, we can say, it doesn't have to just be TSP. I need them looking long-term to keep up with inflation, which we've all felt this year, and taxes. And if I got everything sitting in a G fund, or almost all of it in the G fund the day I retire at 60, it's going to be very difficult for my investments to ever keep up if I live longer. Longevity becomes my risk at that point. So be very careful of that. So time-wise, it might not be a good idea to always look at a target date based on the day you're going to retire, because very few of us, especially if we have a good sized TSP, are not going to be taking that money and spending it starting day one. So again, just be very careful on that. Again, I think it's very important that you sit down and talk to somebody to see what's right for you. Breakdown here real quick. I will spend just a moment on this. The slide, I want to look at the bottom part. I told you that you have the traditional TSP and the Roth TSP, pre-tax, after tax. So if we look at the bottom two here, again, tax qualified investments. If you were in our class before that we talked about the TSP, we shared this also. But just understand, if I'm doing tax qualified investments, that's pre-tax money. This is your traditional TSP. That means I have them taking it out of my income, my paycheck, and putting it into TSP before they tax it. So I use the example, if I make $100,000 a year and I want them to put 10% into my TSP, that's $10,000, and I want it to be the traditional, they're going to take it out. And now when I get my W-2 at the end of the year, my taxable amount of income is only going to show 90,000. I had them take it out before they counted it as part of my income for taxes. However, then it's going to grow tax deferred. But when I go to take that money out in retirement, now they're going to charge me taxes for that. And it's always going to be taxed. Well, I say always, based on the laws now, it's always going to get taxed at your ordinary income tax rate. So if you're taking out large chunks, I want to pay off my mortgage, I want to go on a huge trip, and I take out 30, 40,000, that 30, 40,000 is getting added onto your income for that year. So be very careful on that. That takes some planning on the end there with some of the income. The Roth TSP, this is where you say, okay, I want to count it as my income now. So if I make 100,000 and I put 10% into my Roth TSP, at the end of the year, my W-2 is going to show I made 100,000. I'm counting it as my income now. It's going to grow tax deferred, but then I get the money out tax free. And a lot of people say, boy, that's the perfect one. I want it. And I tell people, I'll give the famous answer of any financial advisor. Well, it depends. If you're in a situation, two places I see that this becomes an issue. First one is if you make a lot of money now and you have a very good income, or maybe your spouse does too, and you guys are at a very, very large tax bracket, 35, 40%, maybe even 42. You might be in a place of, we need every tax break we can get now. Well, if that's the case, then you're probably going to want to do the traditional where you're getting the tax break now. And then the thought is you're probably going to be in a lower tax bracket when you retire. And when you pay the taxes, you're hopefully maybe going to be in a 20, 25%. So you're like, well, pay 35% now or 20% later. I'll go with the 20% later. That's probably the biggest reason we see people stay with the traditional, is they're worried about their tax bracket now. The other one I see, and this is again a little bit more, if we sat down and ran the numbers, if you're in a position that you cannot afford to max out your TSP right now, and I told you 22,500 or 30, say you're in a place where I can only do 10,000 right now. I can only do 10,000. Well, understand, my salary is 100,000 and I say put it in the traditional, they're taking that 10,000 out, but my net pay coming out might only look more like 7,500 coming out, 8,500, because it's lowering my taxable income. So my numbers might not drop by that whole 10,000. So I might be able to say, well, I feel like I can take that less than 10,000. Maybe I can do 12,000 into my TSP, and allows you to try to get more money into your traditional. Vice versa, if I put my money into the Roth up front, 100,000 is getting taxable. There's no change there. Now I might only be able to do the 10,000. So if I'm not hitting the maximum that I can have in my TSP, you might want to look at the traditional, because it might allow you to put some more money into your TSP. Just a thought there. All right. So let's keep moving on here. So based on your needs and retirement, we usually tell people if you're going to retire somewhere between 58 and 65, and again, I know that's a big range, but we'll go with that right now, the typical retirement years for federal employees. We're going to tell you, we want to assume about a 4 to 5% withdrawal rate. If you say, oh, I got $1 million in my TSP, I'm so excited, or I need $1 million, be careful, because again, at 4 or 5%, that might only be 40,000 a year pre-tax. Again, they're going to tax it, so it might turn out only being 30,000 that you're getting out a year. Be very careful. It might not be enough. So again, always look at the rate that you're going to take out, not so much the actual dollar amount. I have people all the time that are looking at me and say, Michael, I have $1 million in my TSP. Am I good for retirement? And again, I have to answer it. Well, that depends. What are your needs? Remember, we come back to that at the beginning, calculating your needs first. I had a couple that I worked with. She was a lunch lady in a middle school, and her husband was a janitor. She came in, he had passed away. She literally was just living off her Social Security check. The same house they bought when they first got married 40 years or 60 years before, ended up having hundreds of thousands in the bank just because she never spent. So for her, she didn't need as much. That was not as imperative to her. You're in a situation, you got a second home, you refinanced your home, and you got a huge mortgage now, you might need more. So again, it all is going to depend on your situation. So I always tell people, go back to the withdrawal rate more than the actual dollar amount of your account. 4 to 5%, I think, is a good starting point to look at, to say, hey, is this going to be enough income for me and my family? Again, as you see at the bottom, I think it's imperative you speak to a financial advisor about this, about details about your personal plan. And notice that personal plan, it's based on you at this point. Also, again, once you've got that plan down and you know what your needs are and you're looking at it, now you can say, well, maybe I need to increase my contributions. Maybe I need to diversify my allocations different, or my investments different. Maybe I need to be a little more aggressive because I need to catch up. Or, hey, I'm pretty close to my goal of what we need. Maybe I need to make it more conservative and not take on as much risk. And finally, how much time until I need the income? And again, people look at this like, well, Michael, thanks for telling me this 20 years ago. Come back to what I mentioned. We're not planning on probably spending all of your TSP first day you retire. This is something you're probably going to use over 20, 30 years. Some of your investments can have a long-term investment mindset outlook there for you going forward. So it's very important that you think about your time until you need that income. You can diversify yourselves. Now, TSP makes it a little difficult, but there's other ways you can do that once you're in retirement, that you can diversify some of your investments. All right. What are the risks of investing? I tell people, and this is again, TSP, private investing, whatever. I'm going to show you 3 of the big ones that I look at. Stock market risk, we all know that one, right? The economic cycles, the ups and downs, the bulls and the bears. Volatility over the last 10 years has been crazy. We've had some really good years, but now we're starting to have some rough years. That's going to be there. And that's the one everybody thinks about. And that's the one that usually drives any of our decisions when we talk about the market. So we're worried about the stock market risk. But what about inflation risk? And again, this is where we say what I mentioned, prices are going to increase faster than your money grows. Energy costs, food prices are usually the biggest one. And I use the example, take your parents shopping with you sometime in a grocery store. And I probably can say it'll probably be more than 5 times you'll hear a phrase similar to this that says, I cannot believe that's that expensive. My goodness, why is it that expensive? I remember when I was a kid, we used to buy milk for a nickel a gallon, or whatever, some kind of statement along that. You'll probably hear 4 or 5 of those, if not more, when you're out there shopping with them. Well, understand you're going to be that parent someday. And if your investments are not keeping up, things are going to get more expensive and you're not going to be able to afford them. And your quality of life is going to deteriorate. That is the most important. And the problem is with the inflation risk, there's no coming back from it. Stock market risk, we can take a hit. It can come back with a couple of years. Inflation, once it's here, I don't see too many times that things drop in price that much, especially the basics that you need to have. So be very careful of that inflation risk and then interest rate risk. If you have interest rate and they decrease, you can lose a lot of income. If you're in some kind of fixed account, a CD or your F fund, and they start to lower prices, it could hurt you. And again, if interest rates increase, bond funds and those kind of things could get hurt by increasing that. And again, that could be another talk with the TSP at another time. But just understand, the main reason I put this up here is I want you to know there's different risks than just the ups and downs of the market. You have to look at the whole picture. One of the things to remember also with your TSP, when you go to retire, a couple things with that. Normally, an IRA retirement accounts that you have it set up that if you take money out of them before you turn 59 and a half, they're going to charge you not only the taxes, but also a 10% early withdrawal fee for taking it out before you were retired. In their mind, they use 55, 59 and a half. They do have a loophole, don't they always, that says that's why we have so much tax law out there. It says that at age 55, if you've worked at least 30 years and you have retired after age 55, you can withdraw funds from your retirement account with that company, which in your case, the TSP, live off of it, pay the taxes, of course, if you have the traditional, but you don't have to pay the early withdrawal penalty. So that's huge. Again, if you retire the year you turn 55, it's going to come out again, no penalty. You still have to pay the taxes, but no penalty. The other reason I bring this up is if you go to retire, let's say at 58, and you're talking to a financial advisor, and the financial advisor says, you know what, I know you need money now, but let's go ahead and move all the money over to an IRA. Understand, if it goes to an IRA, this rule goes away. The IRA now falls back to the 59 and a half that you have to wait to draw the money out of. 58 to 59 and a half is probably not as big of a deal, but if you're a special provision and you're retiring at 52, 53, that's a big deal. Or even if you're for some reason going out at 55, that can be a big deal. So again, I tell people be very careful of that. That again, you want to keep money accessible to you through your TSP at least till age 59 and a half. Now, as far as when you retire, where you want to do with your money, the main options here, and I say you can mix and match these. You can, and I'm not going to go into all these today. I know we've done them before. I just want to hit this to say there are options. You can leave it alone. You do not have to do a thing with your TSP when you first retire. You can annuitize it. That means set up a monthly lifetime income that you cannot outlive, but the money's not yours anymore. You can do a monthly or what I call periodic payment now. They changed some of the laws to where now you can take the money monthly, quarterly, yearly, change those out. And as long as you have money in there, you can take it. Just there's no guarantees at that point, like there's the annuities, but it's still your money. IRA transfer, again, if you get to the point where you're like, hey, I want to diversify more, I want some other options, I don't want all my money tied up with the government, you might want to transfer that out to an IRA, whether you work with a financial advisor or do it on your own, that might be an option. And finally, the full withdrawal, where you just want to cash it in and you're done. I tell people, that's what you might want to look at. So again, you are not required to do all of these or one of these only. You can mix and match these also. All right, let's get to the last one here. Not understanding the cost of your federal employee group life insurance. Again, one of those things that the long-term effect of this and not looking at the long-term picture can definitely have a detrimental effect on you and your family. So in this case, looking here with John, when we look at this, you look at FEGLI, it's a 5-year guaranteed renewable term. So the key reason I bring that up is if you're in a situation where you have option A, option B, or option C, option B is the big one we talk about. That's where you have like the 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 times your salary. If you have that every 5 years can go up in price. Now they can't take it away from you, but they can raise the price on you, and can happen. So again, you look at this example here with John. Look at the top here. You notice currently he's got $582,000 of coverage. He's paying $157 a month, which is not bad. But notice at age 60, when he's going to retire, it went up a little bit because he got raises because it's based on your salary. But now notice it went from 157 to 790 a month. That's huge. Notice at age 65, didn't take a huge of a jump, but because it is a 5-year renewable term, it went up 5. Notice at age 70 then, your amount actually dropped a little here. And notice the price almost doubled. So it's crazy. So you got to be very careful of these things. Again, the 5 years renewable, and also at retirement, the prices can go up. So you just got to be very careful on that as you look at it. Here's something to remember. You can always decrease FEGLI. Even in retirement, you can say, hey, I want to only do 3 times. I only want to do 2 times. I want to drop Part B. You can always do that in retirement, but you cannot increase it in retirement. So that's a key point there. So if you're going to make a difference and you want to do something different, and like we say here, calculate the FEGLI cost and compare it with personal life insurance, term, permanent insurance, whichever one's right for you. But you got to look at it, but make sure that you're looking at all the differences there to see what's right for you. Because once you're out, you can't get back in, but it still might be a better option for you savings wise. Term life insurance, it's just what it says. It's got a term, usually 10, 20, 30 years, and it's going to expire. Far less expensive because usually it's a use it or lose it. The premiums are lost at that point. You don't get it back unless you have a return of premium rider that you can add on there. That is a possibility, but it's going to cost more at that point. The reason you do a term is the goal is, well, when the term is done, 20 years, 30 years, whatever it might be, that debt is paid off. We see this a lot for people that buy term insurance to cover their mortgage if they pass away, to be able to pay it off for their family so they don't have that monthly payment. So the goal is, what, at the end of that term, that mortgage should be paid off. Or you saved up enough by not doing the more expensive insurance that you now are able to adequately provide for your family from your savings that you don't need the insurance. Permanent, this is more the lifetime. This is the one where you're not going to outlive it. It's going to go to 90, 95. Sometimes you can recover the premiums on this one if you've had it for so long of time. You can maybe get a cash value plus maybe make some too. Usually this is the kind we see for people that want to provide for a survivor benefit, where they want to only do a partial survivor benefit and they want to do life insurance. Usually they'll do more of a permanent. And then finally, it can cover estate taxes if you're in that situation. For most people, that doesn't affect them anymore. I think now it's like 17 million if you're over that number now, that you'd have to worry about estate taxes. If you're in that case, I highly recommend you sit down and talk to an attorney and make sure your assets are protected, or sit down and talk to a financial advisor to make sure you're protected there. How much does your family need in life insurance? Well, you want to maintain that similar lifestyle. So maybe you need enough to pay off the debt, mortgages, cars, funerals, credit cards. Is it going to provide some income, as we just mentioned? Is it going to replace some of that partial survivor benefit? I always tell people, for a quick estimate, assume a 5% withdrawal rate from the death benefit. So if you buy $1 million policy, we're talking about that providing you $50,000 a year. Maybe you wanted to provide for your kids' education. Now, so this is a personal choice from different people. Some people say, hey, I had to pay my own way, let them fend for themselves. Everybody's different. And then finally, like I mentioned earlier, you might need it to pay estate taxes if you have a large enough estate at that point. So that's the 5 big mistakes. A couple of resources I just want to give you here, some extras that you might want to look at and have there for you. First of all, OPM, Office of Personnel Management. Everything's got to be an acronym, so it's OPM. That is going to be your HR department in retirement. So go to opm.gov, you can reach them. Consult professional organizations, NARF, if you haven't heard of them. It's the National Association of Active and Retired Federal Employees. I am not a member at all, so I can say this freely. I think it's a great program to be a part of. They're the only one I know that actively advocates to Congress on behalf of the retired federal employee. So I'd love to have somebody talking on my behalf to Congress. So I think it's a great group to be a part of. If you're not, definitely look into it. Federal Daily, great resource for just getting updates on different things with your benefits. Livingston Federal, it's actually Livingston Financial Group now. We've changed that over, but it's the same. If you put in livingstonfederal.com, it'll take you to livingstonfinancialgroup.com. We usually have some great articles. We have some calculators on there. Plus, it's easy to get a hold of us if you want the benefit analysis. And then finally, participate in retirement planning seminars like this. You're doing a great job. Try to find ones that are focused for federal employees. You can go to some that are just general planning that are good for retirement, but you always want to make sure that you're hitting some that go with your benefits is what you're looking for. So with that, I'm going to open it up here. It's about 12:50. I have my email on here that if you want to reach out to me, and of course our website, the updated address, you can put in there. But I'm going to open up if anybody has any questions. In fact, I'll go over here and unmute mics. I'm going to say allow you to unmute yourself if you want to ask a question or type it in. be more than happy to answer that for you if you'd like. But thank you for being here. Please go to our website. If you want the benefit analysis, you can put right in there, enter your profile here, your submit profile here, put all your information in, and we can get back to you as soon as possible. All right. Well, I'm going to say thank you. And if there's no questions, I'll stay on for just a few minutes if anybody has one, but feel free to reach out to me anytime you want. And Maya, thank you for hosting this. I know we're going to do our next one on March 8th. I think is the date that we're going out there. So Maya, I know, be looking for that. And we'll do these. I hope these are helpful to you. Please let your coworkers know. We'd love to have them on this also. Maybe to if they're not a member already of FEIAA, maybe you can get them to be a part of it. All right. Thank you all.